Along with the basic frag grenades that just go boom, there's also a pretty nice variety of lethal things that you can chuck at your enemies, or tactical things designed to assist general play, with every grenade and throwable device serving some sort of purpose, helping you to do something productive. There's quite a lot of different grenade types that are fairly common amongst the games, which you can typically expect to see and perform in the same sort of way across the board. But there's also a few other things that are thrown into the games that are quite unique. Whether that's down to how they function, or whether that's just down to them seeming more out of the ordinary compared to all the typical stuff you can expect to see. And in this video, we're going to be going back and taking a look at some of the more unusual things that have popped up along the way. Here's my top 6 unique grenades and throwables in the Battlefield games. So I'm going to kick this list off with the mini grenades from Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1, which might seem like a fairly normal grenade from a first glance, but they're actually both only around the size of a golf ball, meaning that in comparison to your typical frag, they're really bloody tiny, pretty much making the mini grenade the Calibri of the explosives. Of course, the mini grenade in both games take the form of 2 different explosives, with Battlefield 4's being the V40 Mini and Battlefield 1's being the M17, basically being the World War I counterpart. But they're still both around about a similar size, and they're both going to do the same kind of job nevertheless. Because these little balls of death are so lightweight, it means that you can chuck them over a much further distance, though you are going to be sacrificing a bit of power in the process, making those minis a little bit more situational than a few of the other things you can choose from in the armory. Probably not exactly the wackiest grenade in the list, because at the end of the day it's still something that you're going to be tossing at someone that's going to blow up and do some damage. Kinda like what you'd expect a standard frag grenade to do. Though because the mini grenade is such a teeny little thing, it's definitely out of the ordinary in the way it looks and functions. With that said though, its size still shouldn't be underestimated, still having the potential to ruin your enemy's day, nevertheless. Next up on the list is the Type 99 mine from Battlefield 5, which sorta looks a little bit like an old man's hip flask, but is actually an anti-tank mine that not only glues itself to vehicles, but also detonates after a fairly random amount of time, making it pretty interesting, if not a little bit unpredictable. This little mine's got quite a lot of unique properties. It's not going to stick onto things in the environment, or unfortunately people, but it will latch itself onto tanks, cars and things that drive around, sort of like a sticky grenade that likes to destroy vehicles. You can carry a couple of these around at any given time, so if you come across a tank, it's probably best to lob both mines in its direction for maximum effectiveness. Though one thing to point out is the fact that the Type 99's also got a really long fuse time, which is also kinda random. Now normally with most fuse explosives, you can typically expect them to go off at a certain pre-selected time, but these little things are a bit less predictable, taking anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds, which is a little bit weird. I suppose this might give you the chance to load the arse end of that tank up with a few sticks of dynamite first, causing the whole lot to go up in smoke with one really nice bang. But I guess it also gives the driver a little bit more time to take you down and end your little mischievous plan. Or even a chance to bail from that tank and survive the attack, if they catch you in the act and respond quick enough to save themselves. In a series surrounded by military gear and weapons of war, it's safe to say that the Molotov Cocktail is one of the wilder things you'll be able to equip on a loadout, which unsurprisingly featured in Battlefield Hardline. The actual concept of the Molotov itself isn't really too out of the ordinary, pretty much having the same sort of function as a bog standard incendiary grenade, which is something that's popped up in quite a few of the different titles, and is known for doing the same sort of thing across them all. As all the Molotov's going to do is create a little puddle of fire where it lands, acting as an area denial tool, burning anyone dumb enough to walk on through it. So it's all pretty much cosmetic, and it's not going to play out in any sort of different way to other incendiary fire starting devices you can find in the series. But it is still, at the end of the day, a friggin' petrol bomb, something you'd probably expect to be lobbing at zombies in The Last of Us, or prostitutes in GTA. Not the sort of thing you'd normally associate with Battlefield, but of course with Hardline being the crazy game it is, centred around cops and criminals, at least it sorta makes sense there, basically being the coolest, most unique fire starting throwable of the bunch. Coming in at number 3 is the Firecracker grenade from Battlefield 5, which is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin, a large firecracker. This is basically the M80, used to simulate artillery fire and explosives, and because you've got 3 of those red tubes strapped together, this gives the throwable 3 distinct bangs when you use it in the game. The firecrackers are going to do what you'd probably expect them to do, acting a little bit like a firework that pops and cracks and makes a bit of noise, and that's about it. They sound a little bit like someone firing off the gun, so that could potentially distract a nearby enemy and lead them away from your position, maybe confuse them into thinking that someone's trying to flank them from behind. Firecrackers also temporarily put a false spotting icon on your enemy's minimap, which might help to trick them into thinking the Firecracker is another player. So in a sense, it kind of functions a little bit like the decoy gadget from Battlefield 4, only probably a tad less effective, with it only lasting a pretty short time. Though with the Firecracker being classified as a grenade, you can throw them a lot further than Battlefield 4's decoys, and hold quite a few of them at the same time too. So if you chuck a few of them behind your enemy's position, they might just do enough to cause your enemies to panic and spin around, giving you a better opportunity to strike them down. Another really unique throwable item in the Battlefield games is the hand flare from Battlefield 4, which in a lot of people's minds is a bit of a pointless thing to have equipped, but is still a pretty unique, distinctive thing for the game to feature nevertheless. Its usefulness over the other grenades and throwables is usually a bit of a debatable topic, as the hand flare is literally just something that you throw on the floor that emits some smoke and creates an evil looking red glow, which might look pretty cool, letting you turn Operation Locker into an underground rave, but otherwise doesn't really provide you with all that many practical benefits. Hand flares do somewhat help to block off some sight lines and make it a little bit trickier for enemies to look past them, especially if you use them in combination with smoke, which makes everywhere look like hell. And on some of the maps with tight corridors and choke points, those red cloud barriers can be more than enough to deter enemies to wander on through. Hand flares are also a direct counter to the infrared and night vision optics, making them a pretty good fit for dark areas and night maps, with it scrambling up your enemy's view, basically making it impossible for them to aim accurately. Though I suppose if you wanted to get creative, you could always use them as signalling tools as well. They might be one of the most situational throwables in the series, but there's no denying that the hand flare is quite interesting, being very different to practically everything else. So in our number one spot of unique grenades and throwables, simply has to be the improvised grenade from Battlefield 1. Easily one of the most mysterious, quirky things you can find in the series. This grenade's description is literally do what you can with what you've got, and that's it. The improvised grenade is basically a handmade device that's just been strapped together with a bunch of old bits and pieces, which in Battlefield 1's case appears to be a wooden plank with a couple of basic tubes and metal tins all wrapped together to form an exploding stick type thing, looking like something that wouldn't seem out of place in the Fallout games. It might look a little bit weird, flinging out like some sort of steampunk stick grenade, and it also functions differently to your normal Battlefield hand grenades too, being heavier in weight, giving it a shorter throwing distance, plus also having a completely random fuse time, meaning it's not always going to play out in the same way every time you use it. Having a crudely assembled grenade, made up of whatever materials happen to be lying around at the time, is definitely a pretty strange thing to put in the game. Similar kind of grenades were actually used by some of the soldiers during World War I, where they put together bombs from jam tins, so it's not the wildest concept in the world, but it's still not exactly something you see all the time, making it a very unique thing for the Battlefield series. So what do you think are the most unique grenades in the Battlefield games? Do you use any of these throwables on your loadouts? Let me know down below in the comments. But anyway, that's basically it for this one folks. Hope you enjoyed the video, thumbs up if you did, and feel free to subscribe for plenty more on my channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll be seeing you in that next episode.